welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm Jason Grillo with AirMiners. It's great to see you all here today for a very special day, a momentous historical day for AirMiners, as we are officially launching our Kiloton Fund. What we're going to do today is outline a little bit more in greater detail about what the Kiloton Fund is, but most importantly, why we're doing this, what our intent is with the Kiloton Fund, and how that can impact change in the carbon removal industry. For that, we're going to have Tito speak for a little bit about, again, starting with why, which is always very important, and then talk a little bit about eligibility. We heard a lot of your questions when you registered for the event today. And then I'll talk a little bit about process and how the application itself is going to work. And then we're going to go into Q&A for the majority of our time today. First, we'll go through the questions that you will, probably very likely pose in the chat. So while Tito and I are speaking, feel free to ask your questions in the meeting chat. We'll get to them immediately afterwards. And then after we're done with addressing the written questions, it'll be time for the raising of hands and asking of questions from you, our audience, live. So with that, we're going to conclude everything at the top of the hour. We're not going to have any post-event networking today. And this event is being recorded so that people who are not able to make it today can hear the FAQs that the frequently asked questions that you as carbon removal entrepreneurs, important people in our carbon removal ecosystem can pose to us as an AirMiners team. We just want to say thank you all for coming again. Thank you all to the people who we consulted with on our way to achieving what we have. And then also thanks to Deborah Graywolf, who's going to be running some of the background operations for today's event. Hey, Deborah. And without any further ado, just want to introduce Tito Jankowski, CEO of AirMiners. Tito.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I know we have people calling in from all over this planet, and I want to thank you for being here. I know many of you you're all in on removing carbon from the sky. Maybe you're up late last night working on a prototype. Maybe you were filing a building permit for some facility on a weird government website. Maybe you're doing a deal with an investor or buyer. Maybe you're driving a long way home from your where your test facility is. And I really appreciate that everybody's here today. As I often say, but I'll say it again today, our purpose today is to empower you to remove carbon dioxide from the sky. This is an invitation to come join us. And like I said, I know many of you are already super active in carbon removal. You're prototyping, you're doing deals, and you're dreaming of starting a carbon removal company. And there's always some next level for you. And we are here to help you get there. We're here to support you to that next level. And our focus today is on carbon removal credits and carbon removal startups. So we want to activate you towards removing carbon from the sky. And so everything we do at AirMiners, we believe in challenging this status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we do that is we're empowering risk takers to accelerate the reversal of climate change through the removal of carbon dioxide from the sky. And so you look at AirMiners, and of course, we have an incredible community of innovators and investors and buyers. Of course, we have a startup accelerator program. And of course, today, we're introducing a fund. It's a new and innovative approach to carbon removal. It's called the Kiloton Fund, and it's a test pilot for the Megaton Fund. And I'll let you imagine what comes after the Megaton Fund. So I want to step back and remind everybody about the challenge that we're working on. Whether it's morning or evening or afternoon where you are, maybe it's midnight. The challenge that we're taking on by being here is that there's billions of tons of excess carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and every day we're adding more. To be on track for IPCC targets, we've got to be removing 10 billion tons per year of carbon dioxide by 2050. That means creating a new industry that works, an industry that's predicated on removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. We got to figure out how to do it, and we got to figure out how to pay for it. So at AirMiners, our contribution to that is the possibility of removing 1 billion tons cumulatively by 2030. We've been working with companies removing carbon dioxide from the air through our accelerator for the last 2 years. We've had 95 teams graduate from the program. They've removed thousands of tons of carbon. They're on track to remove millions of tons of carbon by 2030, and they've raised $93 million of venture capital and grants. It's been incredibly inspiring. But there's a challenge, there's a problem. There's a funding gap in carbon removal. We see great companies, some of the best founders, some of the best teams go unfunded, underfunded, and too slowly funded. It's constraining your ability to test how well your solution works at scale. And this constrains how quickly you can learn and how quickly you can share what you've found. When we think about that 1 billion tons removed for AirMiners, it means we're constraining our options as a planet for how to remove 1 billion tons of carbon from the air. It's super frustrating to be working with teams that have the potential to remove carbon dioxide from the sky, and they can't get there. These are companies that can be part of the solution, and they're going to fail if this gap doesn't get closed. So why is there a gap? We dug into this and looked into why is there a gap in funding for early stage carbon removal? Well, there's a gap for buyers. Buyers are making these corporate commitments for 2030 and beyond, but they need to know the carbon is coming. As customers, they need to know that what they're buying is actually going to get delivered. And the market is changing super quickly. Everybody you talk to has just started their company. I mean, the oldest company in the space is 5, maybe 10 years old. You're seeing all these companies just popping up and saying that they're going to be able to deliver. But the challenge is for corporate buyers, they need to know that what they're buying will get delivered. There's also a gap for investors. Investors aren't sure how quickly this market grows. When we get there, how profitable is carbon removal? If you really do the numbers, how profitable is a direct air capture system? How profitable is a biochar system, a forestry management system? That's why there's a gap. So we're looking at this gap, and we're thinking about what's possible if we close this gap. What happens? What changes it? All we do is we say, let's figure out how to close the funding gap. Enable startup companies to better test out their solutions, provide a signal to big buyers about what's worth buying. It helps investors see the market, see what performs, what kind of companies they want to invest in. So what's really possible if we close the funding gap is rapid acceleration of this entire industry for startups, for buyers, for investors, all in sync. So that's the funding gap. That's what's possible if we close the funding gap. So how might we do this? One of the things that all carbon removal companies have in common is that fundamentally what they're doing is removing carbon from the sky. What if we could close the funding gap with carbon removal credits? The market long-term is signaling that these credits are going to be worth $100 or more per ton. There's a shortage right now. There's demand for carbon credits. Analysts are projecting that that shortage is going to continue into the future. So what if there was a way to provide upfront capital to early stage companies in a way that enables them to prove out their technology, prove out their approach, and we could do it by buying carbon removal credits in a way that empowered the company to grow and they could deliver the credits sometime in the future once their operations are up and running. To do this, we'd add a discount to the credits based on the likelihood of delivery, what the price of the credits would be once they're delivered. That would be a way to close the funding gap. And the beauty of this is it aligns investments in carbon removal with carbon actually getting removed. By buying credits from startup companies at a discount to their future price, we're able to come in and purchase credits from companies aligned towards gigaton scale carbon removal. So we're looking at this and talking about this as something we're building, and looking at how to do this. How do we test this out? How do we test out this concept? There's nothing like this on the market today. Buying carbon removal credits at a discount with a delivery date in the future, a way to close the funding gap that aligns startups and investors around removing carbon from the air. How do we test that? And we need to test it fast. Every 9 days, another billion tons of carbon dioxide gets added to the atmosphere. Right, I'm going back to the slide of like AirMiners is aimed at 1 billion tons cumulatively by 2030. You know what? We added 1 billion tons in the last 9 days. We add 40 billion tons every 365 days. So the AirMiners Kiloton Fund is our test pilot. It's our test of how do we build out this model? How do we start closing the funding gap in carbon removal? The overview is we're going to be buying carbon removal credits from startups with a 2030 delivery date. So this isn't you have to deliver the credits soon. We don't want your first credit. You want to go sell your first credit to some big buyer and have a big press release? Awesome. We're all for that. We're going to buy credits that are in the future once your operations are up and running. We're going to pay a discounted price. We're going to be doing 20 test purchases of $10,000 per team. And our expectation is that we come back to these teams once we build out the Megaton Fund. And just a reminder, the Kiloton Fund is a test pilot for the Megaton Fund. Thanks to Timo for the inspiration for this meme. So our goal is to change how carbon removal startups think about their funding. It's a way to provide an earlier signal to commercialize your later carbon removal credits. Through our accelerator program, through our community, our event series, we're really good at supporting teams. We've had 95 startup companies come through our program. We look at methodology, technology, execution, and more than look, we're there with these teams. So we're connected to top experts to give advice to up and coming innovators, connected to buyers, investors. We have the largest buyers demo day and investors demo day. And all that sets us up for the Kiloton Fund, really being able to look at a team, understand where they're headed, and figure out how to purchase carbon credits from them. So we're open to purchasing credits from anybody, whether you've been a Launchpad participant or you've never heard of AirMiners today, whether you're just hearing about the Kiloton Fund for the first time. We want to talk to you about purchasing carbon removal credits from you. We're seeking 20 teams. Today, we don't know who they are. That's what these 20 boxes represent. And I want to focus on what would it take for a team to get selected? Or even more, why would a team want to get selected? The teams I've met, the people that I've met starting these companies are obsessed with how to remove carbon dioxide from the sky. You want to be a part of the solution for the whole freaking thing. I know you're working on your solution. I know there's some other layer where you say, you know what, we're working on a solution and I want to be part of creating something new, a way to close the funding gap in carbon removal. That's what you get out of being part of the Kiloton Fund. You also get a buyer for your credits, for some of your credits with a future delivery date. This can be a signal to buyers and investors today that this team has met the criteria to have a purchase made. It can also be a signal if you're currently warehousing your credits, you have some 2030 credits or beyond, for example, some enhanced rock weathering companies. It can be a way to prove out your pricing for those future credits. You also get our commitment to support you to deliver the tonnage and go on to remove gigatons. And you also get $10,000. And as a reminder, Kiloton Fund is a test facility for the Megaton Fund. Quick overview of criteria. Look, we're investing in teams' ability to make good on contracts in 2030. So you need to deliver in 2030. And we look across the three areas where we've really engaged with teams through our accelerator experience, through working with early stage companies: methodology, technology, and team. Like, technology is important, methodology is important, and boy, team goes real far for both of those, and just for whatever comes up in your world as you're building out these solutions. So we'll consider teams where there's no established methodology. That's fine. We sure as heck want to see your plan for methodology development, what progress you're making on it, how you're going to go about it. And we'll also consider teams where there's a methodology for 10 other things that are similar. And in that case, we really want to understand what you need to succeed, what separates you from other solutions. We're open to geographies all over the world. Look, what we care about is that you're on track to deliver. These tons that we're buying, they're not going to be delivered tomorrow. They're not your first tons. The tons that we're buying are aligned with you succeeding at being on track for removing gigatons of carbon from the air. It's useful if you're looking for an early start. It's useful if you've got credits for 2030 that you're not sure who's going to buy them. And that's the purpose of the Kiloton Fund, is to start to close the funding gap for carbon removal. With the 2030 market is already here, we're seeing companies make commitments to making these 2030 purchases. They're doing offtake agreements, investors are coming in, and we're building this model to support closing that funding gap faster than it otherwise would happen. Now, closing, we're not saying that $10,000 or this Kiloton Fund test closes the funding gap. It doesn't close it. What we're doing is a test to prove out this new model to align investment with carbon removal. And here's Jason to walk you through how the application process works for this test pilot. And then we're going to do a Q&A. So like Jason mentioned, please throw your questions into the chat. Jason, you're on mute.
Yep. Thank you. And see a few questions coming on in the chat right now. Thank you, Tito, for your outline. So in terms of the process, the applications are open now. I'll share a link in a minute for the application form. They're open until 11:59 p.m. Pacific time on Friday, September 15th. At that point, our AirMiners team is going to read through the written applications and make our first pass at teams. We'll evaluate what you've written into us and then select a group of teams whom we wish to interview. Then, based on what our team gets from that interview, we'll do some further diligence working with thought leaders who will contact externally to have another take on the teams who we feel are in that round. That's at that point, we'll make our final selections, which will be completed by the end of 2023, when notifications will be sent out to teams who have achieved funding from the AirMiners Kiloton Fund. To outline a little bit more about the further diligence, we are contacting our network of people in AirMiners and around the carbon removal world. If you're interested in watching this, in being an advisor to the AirMiners Kiloton Fund, please contact us at tons@airminers.org. So if you could share that in the chat right now, that would be fantastic. Again, applications are open now, and like I said, I'll share the link in a second here, with a due date of Friday, September 15th, just before midnight Pacific time. And then we will go through the selection process of which could take us several weeks or months to get through, and then we'll make final selections before the end of the year. And looking forward to seeing what we can glean from you and what we learn from you as we go. And here's the application link right now. And with that, I just want to say thanks, and we are going to take your questions one by one from the chat, and then when we've gone through all of them, we will ask you all to raise hands if we still have time and continue from there. So looking through the chat right now, there's a question from JR. Is there a minimum of tons delivered threshold?
The minimum of tons delivered threshold. No. Probably that's short answer. Happy to hear more what your question is there, or what your concern is. But no, there's not a minimum.
Okay. Second question from Boone. Also looks like a bit of a follow-on from JR about price per ton and what is the discount on credits you're expecting. So a little bit about pricing.
Yep, we're going to be negotiating that with each team. We're buying credits with a delivery date of 2030, and we'll be working that out with each team.
Okay. Okay, so it's on an individual basis when we work with a team. So there's no set price per ton, there's no set discount, is what you're saying. Bo Milliken, what would a successful test look like? And Makoto seconds Bo's question as well.
A successful test looks like proving out this model to purchase carbon removal credits with a future delivery date as a way to fund the growth of carbon removal startups. I mean, I think that's fundamentally what this test comes down to. It's proving out we're making these purchases from teams that can deliver in a way that we can then go on and sell the credits to an offtake, a buyer, as a way to get more funding into early stage carbon removal companies.
And Makoto Air has followed up. If the KPIs can be communicated, we, the carbon removers, can ensure we do what we can to ensure the success of this test.
Love that. One thing I'd love to see, this is more from the buyer side, but working on setting up a offtake agreement for the credits that we purchase through the Kiloton Fund in advance of them actually being delivered. So, for example, if we come back a year from now and we say, "Hey, here's somebody that's signed up, is committed to buying all the tonnage that's delivered through this fund." I hear your question, Makoto, about KPIs for startups. Again, it goes back to methodology, technology, and team, and we can add some more about that in the Q&A. I appreciate your ensuring we do what we can to ensure the success of this test. Hell yeah.
Yep. Adam Gordon is asking, how do you evaluate new tech? How do you tell the potential quality of the credits before any real tests are done?
That is the question, isn't it? Right? That's where the gap is in funding carbon removal credits, right? If you're a buyer, you're like, it's like you go to Domino's Pizza. You're like, I want to buy a pizza and I want the pizza to actually show up. But it's like, there's all these new companies popping up. Even the companies that are established haven't been around very long. How do you evaluate new technology? How do you tell the potential quality of the credits before any real tests are done? It depends on how you define real tests. What we're looking for is scientific data. We're looking for test data. We're looking for any field data that you have, anything you can compare to. If there's somebody else that's gone after a similar methodology or a similar technology, we want to be there to work with you to understand that and evaluate what you're building. Again, I said we're open to new methodologies. We're open to established methodologies where other people are already doing this similar methodology. What it comes down to is delivery by 2030.
Yeah, and a lot of the application questions are geared toward evaluating your ability to execute on the plan that you set up. That, again, if, as I mentioned earlier, even if you do not have a methodology, even if you have a brand new way of removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere that hasn't been recognized by a standards or body or accrediting organization, that's okay. We at least want to know that there's a plan in place, that there's something in the future that you have your eye on as a way of getting that carbon removal credit registered and certified.
I love that people are seconding and thirding and everything. And if our answer comes back and you have another question or you want to hear more about it, great, just ask it. I love that people are seconding and thirding, and if what you had in mind is what we got to, then happy to share more about this for another question.
Dr. Harjeet Singh's asking about that. What about methodologies and standards?
What about them? That's what I want. I'm kind of going to interpret this question, but happy to hear more details about it. What about methodologies and standards? I guess I don't know what that question means. What about them? I mean, like, we need new methodologies to be developed and to succeed. We also need established methodologies to succeed. The benefit of working on an established methodology is that buyers are more comfortable with it. Buyers have already signed off on some methodologies or made purchases based on a methodology. But 1 billion tons removed is going to take more than the space that we already know about. We're going to need to build out new methodologies too. I don't know if that answered your question, Dr. Harjeet Singh, but let me know if you have a follow-up.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what we were talking about earlier, that yes, it's important to have, if you're already embarked on a carbon removal method that has an established methodology, fine. If there's a new methodology that has to be in place by a by accrediting body, that's fine too. We just want to know that it's on your radar and that you have milestones to get there in the future. Sean Moen wants to ask, what's the legal entity structure of the Kiloton Fund?
The legal entity structure of the Kiloton Fund. It is a, gosh, what is it? We just said it's an LLC. I don't know if that answers any other question. The term fund has certain connotations from a regulatory perspective. Yep, the Kiloton Fund is a LLC.
Yep.
We raised $250,000 and the fund is closed. So we're ready to start writing checks.
Yep. Samuel Walker's asking, guessing you'll cover this, but curious if it's project focused or some unique aspect on format.
So I'm going to take a leap on this one. My sense is it actually, maybe I won't. Samuel, if you could share a bit more about some unique aspect on the format. Overall, similar to some of the other purchasing programs at the early stage, we're going to be purchasing from the company rather than from a project. You don't have a project yet, so.
Yeah, I mean, the way that it's going to be structured is that, yes, the contract will be between AirMiners and the company, and in that contract there will be there would be projects listed as projects that would deliver in a certain vintage year. I'm hoping that answers the question. Kind of like the way a master services agreement works with individual projects that are executed under that master services agreement. If anyone's familiar with that structure. Who's Ryan Anderson coming in with asking, who's provided funding for the Kiloton Fund?
Yep, it's angels, venture capitalists making personal commitments, the same type of people that are looking at investing into individual companies see this as a way to prove out a new mechanism to fund companies.
Yep.
And so it's probably a lot of people that you pitched.
Yep. Mayor Ryan, have you thought about MRV? Just a little bit. Have you thought about the MRV component? Do you have a preference? Is there an MRV partner you've already brought on board? We don't have an MRV partner per se, I would say, but we want to know what your plan is right now for measuring, reporting, and verifying. so that, again, when we do our own diligence, that if there's a way that we need to work with a team that we particularly like, and they maybe don't have as robust a MRV plan in place, that we can have that that we can use our own wherewithal to find an MRV partner of choice. Sarman Qureshi is looking for what tier, and apologies if I got your name wrong, what TRL levels are you expecting to fund?
Yeah, so we're looking for 3 to 6, in the sense that, for our accelerator program, we've said, we can take people with an idea as long as it's, you've selected an idea and you really thought about it. For this, we're really looking for, you've got a proof of concept that you're building, you've got some test data, you've got potentially even field data. That's what we're looking for, so that we can get a sense of, so we can understand your delivery timeline for 2030.
Okay, Kate Murphy, does being part of the Kiloton Fund have any bearing on getting accepted for the Megaton Fund?
Yeah, our expectation is that companies that are accepted into the Kiloton Fund, we go on to do something with them with the Megaton Fund. I won't be saying anything more about that, besides that the Kiloton Fund is a test pilot for the Megaton Fund. And there's a picture of a shark from Timo.
Yeah. Nicholas Seat, is there a dollars per ton target? I think we already talked about that, about pricing earlier. There's no dollars per ton hard-coded flat rate, flat price target. It's something that is going to get negotiated between AirMiners and the company that will receive funding for the credits to be delivered later. What third-party verification systems are you considering in addition to your own experts? Again, we are going to be working with registries and standards bodies to understand how some of these methodologies could, if they're an established methodology, what the companies would be able to achieve under those methodologies, or how likely it is that a new methodology would be able to get traction. Can the startup, Noah Lieberman's asking, can the startup be funded and still be able to be considered for the program?
Yeah, of course. When I talk about those teams that are unfunded, underfunded, and too slowly funded, I've met founders who are, they have a prototype. I've met founders that have raised millions of dollars that are still unfunded, underfunded, and too slowly funded. If you've been funded, great, good for you, and we'd love to consider buying your credits with a 2030 delivery date as a way to support you to getting to gigaton scale removal.
Chris Wood is asking, will you grade credits as per voluntary confidence level, VCL, which is a great indicator for those forward purchasing credits and guidance of the retrospective cost, all being based on creation costs?
Yeah, big fan of the VCL structure. Will we be grading credits? I mean, ultimately, I'm just looking at this, we're selecting teams. So will we be grading teams using this? I think it's part of our evaluation criteria.
Chris Muglia is asking, are there any mentoring or guidance leading up to the application to ensure that AirMiners receives the best possible applications with the information you need to make fully informed decisions?
I love that. Let's do that.
Yeah. tons@airminers.org. TONS@airminers.org. And it looks like Dr. Harjeet Singh seconded Chris's question.
Yeah, I love that question. If anybody else has questions like that, like mentoring or guidance leading up to the application, I mean, look, that's just a quick note on the application. The teams that we're looking to buy from, the questions that we put in the application are things that you're already thinking about. They're things you've already put in applications for other programs to sell. They're things you've put in your pitch decks. If you're finding that the questions are really hard, I encourage you to go for it and think through these questions and figure them out. But ultimately, the companies that we're purchasing from, generally they're gonna already have answers handy for these applications. We're not thinking this application is going to be something that's a major time commitment for teams to work on. And with that, tons at airminers.org if you have any concerns or questions, or if you're like, yo, I'm having trouble with these questions, but I have some questions or something like that. Yeah, this is a test for how we closing the funding gap. And so would love input and feedback. And I love the idea of doing mentoring or guidance leading up to the application to help teams receive the best, put in the best application.
Yeah, and not only that, but you'll notice we offered a couple hints of just what we're expecting in the application, in the written application itself. Like there's some of the, I'm sure some of you have already looked at the application. Some of the questions have suggestions of like 1,000 characters for an answer, 2,000 characters for an answer. So, we're going to get a lot, and we'll certainly ask follow-up written questions as well if there's something that's ambiguous in what we receive on the back end. But the goal of this is to make it as smooth a process as possible for you, the startups, so that look, 3,000 characters, so that we can get some of those best applications. 3,000 characters is about a page, single spaced. 2,000 and 1,000 characters is less than that. So that's what we aim to receive from that. And it's amazing to us, just condensing the answers into a compact, condensing an answer to what seems like a really detailed question into a really compact summary can really crystallize what we're looking for. We found that in terms of the Launchpad applications, which we evaluated, that you can really get to the point relatively quickly with that. Mayo comments it's methodology agnostic. That's correct. Christina Beckman. Hey, Christina.
There was a question from Boone that was.
Oh, sorry, Boone. Yeah. Discounted price negotiated based on the forecasted value of credits in 2030, question mark.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, the way to make this work, the way for anyone to close the funding gap by buying carbon revolt credits is you need to buy the credits today, and you need to be able to sell the credits tomorrow for a higher price. And so understanding what that price is in 2030 is certainly a component of the price that we'll offer today. And I saw there was a question from somebody else that came to me privately, so I won't say what their name is, but they said, if you're making a partial payment, what's the value cost per ton? And I just want to emphasize that the point of this is we're making the full payment. That's our goal, is to make full payments up front. That's the point is to close the funding gap. That means capital today. That goes back to the design of this structure. Yeah,
the $10,000 or so is going to go out the door in one check, and then we will work with the team over the course of the next 6 or 7 years in order to make sure that that contract gets delivered on. That's the benefit of being part of the Kiloton Fund. It's the monetary value, a signal to other buyers, a signal to investors, and support from our AirMiners team to make sure that you can, as a startup, can deliver on the amount of contracted tons for the future. All right. Christina says she might have buyers. Have you sorted out what this might look like, if there could be a routine and close way for buyers to follow along with the success of startups they're supporting?
Have you sorted out what this might look like in terms of keeping?
So Christina, it sounds like you're asking, like, if a buyer says, "Hey, I'd like to buy these tons when they're delivered in 2030," can you at least tell me? It sounds like, Christina, let me know if I'm misstating what your question is. Like, a buyer would want to know, and over the course of the term of the contract, what's it looking like? How close are you to being able to deliver? that kind of thing.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, we'd be happy to talk to buyers about what they're looking for, what's valuable to them about getting updates, about following along with the success. Like what is it that's valuable for them there? We'd love to connect and have those. We're having those conversations now, right? In terms of on the buyer end, you know, what is it like to participate in the Kiloton Fund? Happy to have those conversations.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Akeem Hoffman, concerns about how this can be break even.
Yep, 6 years at current interest rates, adding all your admin costs into it, plus the tech and commercial risks that some projects will not come through. Where is your money printing machine stored? That's like a reverse of a carbon removal machine. It's a money printing machine. Look, the way to make this work is you're purchasing credits today at a discount, and you're selling them when they get delivered for full price. And that's what it, like anyone needing to make this work would need to do those things. For the Kiloton Fund, look, it's a test in terms of admin costs and other things, but ultimately you're totally right. Yeah, the tech risk, commercial risk, that's exactly what we're taking on here. Just figuring out how do we make this work.
Adam Gordon had the same question as Akeem. Samuel Walker agrees that answers this question. Tara, not to be jumping ahead, but are there any interested funders in phase 2 megaton scale going on? Companies in progress working toward millions of tons to be removed by 2030, ...
I didn't see that original one.
Okay.
Are there any interested funders in a phase 2 megaton scale going on? No comment on that. But yeah, companies in progress working on millions of tons through by 2030. I get it. You need that funding gap closed for you ASAP. That's what we're here for.
So we had a couple of cross questions with among the audience, and then Sylvia Skazafava is asking, are you funding project developers only, or also other kind of carbon rural enterprises? For example, we do not develop projects, we verify them, keeping full track of the whole buyer chart, supply and deployment. And then, yep.
The way this model works is we're buying carbon removal credits at a discount for a delivery date sometime in the future, 2030 for the Kiloton Fund. I hear what you're saying, Sylvia. If your company is going to be primarily selling carbon removal credits as your business, I think we can find a way to take a look. And if your company isn't doing carbon removal credits, then it's probably not a fit. But we understand that, you know, for tracking and verification companies, we've seen that software companies, for the most part, get funded. Investors are comfortable with it. Customers are comfortable with these kinds of models. We don't see as much of a funding gap for kind of the software companies or service companies in carbon removal. Where the gap really appears is you're out there building a prototype, land, operations, labor, getting up to speed on that is where the funding gap is most.
Yeah.
I applaud you for doing a model. You're a fit for the Launchpad Accelerator program, where we take anybody that's a part of the tool chain for carbon removal, and our applications are open now for the next batch. And they close on August 11th for Launchpad. And for that, it's you know, we've seen teams come in that do marketplaces, that do MRV, that do capture, storage, and you get a lot out of seeing other people, other innovators working on different pieces of the supply chain. And for the Kiloton Fund, we're focused on companies that are going to be selling carbon removal credits.
Yeah. But by the way, that was a prompt for me to share the Launchpad application for the August 11th Launchpad deadline.
Yep.
So, okay. So question came in a direct message to me. Can we use payments as matching funds for other grants? That came to me as a direct message.
Oh, okay.
Private
I wasn't
message.
sorry with it. Could you repeat the question? Or maybe you
Sure. Can we use payments as matching funds for other grants?
Depends on your gotta ask your grant maker. Fine with us, great. That's the idea, right?
I mean, to be clear, this is not a grant, for other grants, ours is not a grant, just to be very.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah. It's basically, it's a revenue payment. It's a commercial payment.
Yep. I'm gonna throw in
Teresa,
a DM I got too. It's a comment, but I just want to open it up. Somebody wrote in saying they've got skills that are going to be relevant for helping companies succeed. They want to help. Awesome. If anybody else is like that, you can email tons@airminers.org. Like it's go time, right? Like you're working on removing carbon from the air directly. Awesome. Like apply to the Kiloton Fund, apply to the Launchpad program. If you want to help support people who are working on removing the carbon, we're here for that too. I want to help get you connected so that you can level up your support, level up how you're engaging with removing 1 billion tons by 2030. So thanks for that.
Teresa Liu, will there be future application cycles for additional funds, or will the next fund be the Megaton Fund?
Not talking today about any future application cycles or additional funds or things like that. Besides, Kiloton Fund is a test pilot for the Megaton Fund.
Yeah. Adam Vaughn, are you exclusively doing removal? Frontier, for example, actively discourages avoiding CO2 emissions from sources today to focus exclusively on removal in the future.
Yep, we're doing exclusively removal.
Yeah, only carbon, removing carbon dioxide.
Our AirMiners' vision is a stable planet, a thriving civilization by 2050. Absolutely, we need a market for decarbonization. Absolutely, we need innovators going all out on decarbonizing the planetary system. Our mission is on the carbon removal piece, which is removing 1 billion tons cumulatively by 2030, adding up to that stable, thriving civilization.
Yep, and on that note, Scott at Inversion Point asks, are CO2e removals in consideration? In other words, methane.
Yep, so I'd like to get there at some point. If you can make a compelling through line to producing carbon removal credits specifically, there's potential there. But I'd say for this test, we're really, it's a stretch. We're really aimed at just buying carbon removal credits. I want to get CO2e there as a way to grow out the carbon removal market. I don't think we're there yet.
Sylvia asks follow-up, how do you relate to the NASDAQ Cork Price Index biochar carbon removals?
Any thoughts on that one? How do you relate to?
Yeah, I mean, look, I get it. Like Puro and NASDAQ, they list the cork for biochar. I mean, you can talk about that when if you're doing biochar, but we're not necessarily looking at any one particular index when we sit down and have a pricing discussion. So yeah, Bo Milliken, I think that was answered earlier with Tara's question. Chris Mulia, oh, good operations question. Is it possible to see all of the applications questions at once somewhere to facilitate answering? So, and that was given the approval by 3 different people. So
nice.
What that signals to me is that we should put that on the Kiloton Fund website so that people can have just a pop-up PDF of what the questions are. The Kiloton Fund, airminers.org/kiloton, will get updated later today with some of these FAQ questions, and we can add that as well, so that you have a glimpse at what the application is requesting before you sit down and do your magic on the keyboard to enter in the actual application form, which is a link on this application called Jot form.
Yeah.
So yeah.
You can also enter X's. That's what I've been doing as I've been reading through you can do the X.
Well,
there's a save button too. In the reason we're using Jot form is there's a save button also as you go into your responses. You have to sign up for Jot form, but yeah, list of all the questions. Will do.
Adam
suggestion.
Gordon is also asking, what are your projections for future carbon credit prices per ton?
What we're seeing from the market and from analysts is well over $100 per ton, or let's say $100 per ton. To Bloomberg has a model that shows prices peaking around $225 per ton, 2030, 2032, and then descending to $100 per ton by 2050. That's part of the reason we need to close and start closing this funding gap, is because the more slowly we develop new solutions, the more companies, the more solutions that go unfunded, underfunded, and slowly funded, means that the supply crunch is just going to be even worse. And so ultimately, we want to get to 1 billion tons removed by 2030 and set us up for removal by 2050 of 10 billion tons per year.
So, I mean, the thing is that, look, projections are projections. Look, as I've coached many startup teams in Launchpad, that projections are, forecast for the future. It's not a set in stone prediction about what will, with 100% certainty, happen. So we don't really know what the price of carbon per ton is going to be in 2030. Bloomberg has an estimate, sure, but that's always subject to change. This market is evolving rapidly. There's policy influences, commercial influences, funding influences, macroeconomic influences. So sure, it's all a factor that is going to affect that price per ton. So things change. John Tremarco asks a good question. Someone else seconded. Will our applications be published or kept private?
Private.
Yeah.
The only part we're announcing is who we've purchased from.
Yep.
And we'll be encouraging buyers and investors to get behind these teams and support them, but we're not going to be publishing your application or the pricing or anything like that.
Yep. Andrew Wilkerson is asking, can you apply both for Launchpad and the Kiloton Fund? Ooh, good question about cross applications. Yep. The answer is, yeah, sure, I can handle that. To be clear, the Kiloton Fund and Launchpad are considered entirely separately. So yes, you can do both. There's nothing that says you can only apply to the Launchpad if you're applying to the Kiloton Fund or vice versa. I personally would encourage you to apply to both. So they are separate applications. They're considered separately. They have different criteria for a different kind of program for each. Any Samuel Walker, any restrictions on where the applications are based? US only or global? Global. This is a global problem we're handling. We handle a very healthy proportion of outside US applications and teams in Launchpad. We are very familiar with working with teams outside of the United States. So please, if you're outside the US, please do apply. Okay, knowing we have about 5 minutes left.
Yeah, keep the
max
questions
payment
coming.
for each kiloton seller, asks Tara.
So max payment, we're going to make the same test purchase for every team, $10,000.
Okay. What happens if the price collapses, asks Adam Gordon.
Yeah, I talked with our investors about this. If the price of carbon removal collapses, what it means is someone has discovered an incredibly effective, efficient way to remove gigatons of scale of carbon from the sky in a way that no analyst thought was possible. And many people think is completely impossible. Would love to see it. And yep, if we buy a bunch of carbon credits and the price ends up dropping and collapses, then this fund doesn't work out. And that is a possibility. And I've talked about that with our investors, and game on, bring it on. You've got penny per ton carbon removal credits. Would love to see it.
Building on that, Joe James asks, will you give priority to applicants who, with all other things being equal, have the lowest cost CO2 capture processes?
I mean, it sounds like, yeah, lowest cost carbon capture process sounds good. Ultimately, we're looking at your ability to deliver tonnage by 2030. Low cost sounds good.
Yeah, I mean, we understand that some methods are, more costly today than they are going to be in the future. You know, or that some methods today are more costly than other methods. We get that. And that's why we have that individual pricing negotiation. That's why we are thinking about it again, a discounted price per ton today, in light of needs that different carbon removal companies are going to have in the future. So
you want to talk about the different buckets of, different kind of the thesis?
Yeah, I mean, so we have the idea of like kind of price bands. I'm not going to get into details about what those are, but like different methodologies are going to have kind of a different range that or different methods are going to have a different range of prices that are going to be kind of in our sweet spot about what we're expecting. Again, can't really talk too much about those numbers now, but I mean, like I said, different methods have more expensive prices. Other methods have less expensive prices, and we're willing to take any and all methods that are under consideration, that are out there, and new ones as well. Again, knowing that some of the more novel ones, there is no good pricing band, because no one's really bought any tons yet. Lots of other questions coming in. We only have 3 minutes left, so apologies if we're not going to be able to get to them all. How would you balance credit price against quality factors like additionality, risk of reversal? Cheaper credits may fall short on these parameters, especially on totally novel methodologies. Again, Sylvia, we asked about additionality and risk of reversal in the application itself. So, just
to put another point on that, we're not looking to buy just cheap credits. What we're looking at is, what do we think your credits are going to be worth in 2030, and then we're paying a discount based on that. And the thesis is that there will be different pricing for different types of carbon removal, at least into the near future.
Marcel is asking, what TRL would a typical company be at who successfully secures kiloton funds, and what's a typical ticket size?
I think we already talked about that.
Yeah.
And it's all $10,000 purchases for this kiloton test purchase.
Yeah, and with a band of TRL 3 through 6. Chris Wood, price per ton, having developed a biotech carbon capture solution. Okay, talks about costs. Management for critical nature to durably utilize carbon can also affect. Do you agree durability clearly separates the carbon credit class and associated price required for them? In other words, is there a difference between, are we differentiating by durability, 100-year durability, 1,000-year durability, that kind of thing?
Durability is important. Just to address it, like we don't have any strict criteria in terms of durability. We're talking about 100 years, 1,000 years. Game on. We added 1 billion tons of carbon to the air in the last 9 days. We have no idea how to remove 1 billion tons even for 1 second.
Yeah, these are carbon removal credits. Also, be very clear. Again, this came up earlier. We're not doing avoidance credits. So yep. We are at time. So I know there's 4 or 5 other questions in the chat, and my apologies if we can't get to them. This has been great. If you have additional questions that we didn't get to, feel free to ask us at tons@airminers.org. And also, this recording is going to be available on our YouTube channel for review afterwards. So thanks, Chris. Thanks, Dominic. Okay, and Sita says, yes, 2030 vintage. Taking delivery of credit issued in 2030. Boom, that is exactly right. All right, deadline September 15th. Feel free to ask us questions, and we will see you again at another AirMiners event. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jason and Tito. It's awesome stuff.
Thanks.
Nice seeing you all. See you, Makoto.